Hi heathens! So today's video is going to be one that I feel like I've kind of touched on bits and pieces of in the past, but I've never done like a full dedicated video. So obviously in the future this is probably going to change, and in the past it hasn't always been the same. So as it changes I'll do little update videos, but I wanted to do on camera my normal go-to everyday work makeup routine. So I do not always wear a full face of makeup to work. It depends on what the plans are for the day. If I'm going to like a business meeting for lunch, I don't like to wear foundation because obviously I have to put on a mask. So I don't want to like take off the mask and have like foundation missing in the middle of a work meeting. So it just depends. But when I am wearing a full face, this is pretty much what I do almost without fail. So I start with the eyes as I normally do, and this first sentence is going to be weird, but the palette you use doesn't really matter and you'll see why. So the one that I grabbed, which I got all this stuff out of the bathroom because that's where I typically get ready for work, so I don't usually use these specific products on camera with the exception of the foundation because these stay in the bathroom for me to get ready. So I grabbed the ColourPop All I See Is Magic, which is not a palette that they have anymore. But again, the palette doesn't really matter. As you can see, it's mostly neutrals with a few pops. As long as it has neutrals, that's what I'm using. So I'm just going to go in with a little, let's use this one. This just happens to be a Luxie 121 mini tapered. I just go in with a little fluffy brush, and I'm going to take two matte shades. Typically I'll just use this one. This palette unfortunately does not have a mirror, so I'm going to have to like switch between mirror and palette. And I just put this all up in the crease area for my transition. Whatever's left on the brush, I'm just going to gently brush across the lid. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye. Now this is a shade that you can barely see on me, but that's what I want. I just want something to smoothly go over. Typically I don't use an eyeshadow primer. I also typically don't use a face primer. So I'm just showing you on the real what I typically use if I'm going to do a full face. So then I'm going to go in with this more orangey, slightly darker shade. So depending on if I'm going orange or cool will determine, you know, which shade I use next. But say it's just a normal neutral day, I'll go in with this, and I'm gonna line it along the outer edge and then start to take it up into the crease. So I don't use eye primer typically. I don't use face primer unless there's something I really need to combat for the day, because my normal routine tends to last at least through my work day without issue. Sometimes if I know I have to run an errand on lunch and I might get sweaty, I might go in with a mattifying primer or setting spray, but typically I don't. And on the flip side, if I've got a particularly dry patch that day, like I did this morning right on the tip of my nose, I will go in with a more moisturizing primer or just a thicker moisturizer, because obviously I want the foundation to sit well in those areas and not accentuate the dryness. So another thing that I don't typically use is concealer or blush. So if I'm doing a full face, my full face, sometimes I will use bronzer. So I have the bronzer in here, and ironically enough, if I'm going to wear a blush to work, the one that I've been using is in that same palette. So I'll still be able to show you what it is, but I don't typically wear it. My face flushes so easily that even when I'm wearing foundation, you can typically see this whole area get red through the foundation. So don't really need the blush. So I build it up to typically about this level, and then I take my finger, I go in with a similar shimmer. So typically I would probably choose between this one or this one, or this one if I wanted something really bright. So for the sake of this video, I think I'm going to go in with this one. And I just use my finger. I pick it up. ColourPop shimmers are incredible. I find that for most palettes, like look at this. For most palettes, the shimmers work best with my finger. And for most palettes, the shimmers will work better than the mattes. Even if it's a palette where the mattes don't typically impress me, most of the time the shimmers still will. I'm just a sucker for a nice shimmer. Sorry. And you see it blends in like an almost identical shade, but gives me that pop of a little something special when the light hits it. And then I will go in to the inner corner, but I won't do that. Sorry, I'm trying to reach a makeup wipe. I won't do that until after the rest of my face, like base, is done. So then I'm going to go ahead and go into foundation. Like I said, I typically don't use a primer, but if I do, I'm going to use something like the Tarte Shape Tape Hydrating Base, one of the Tatcha creams that I have, or something along those lines. Those are typically what I'm going to reach for because I know how they perform. Or the Benefit Pearl Primer. I really like that one. So my go-to foundation for work is between two. So this one I use two different shades for. It's the CoverGirl True Blend Matte Made in L10. This one is for a little bit more full coverage. Or, and you've seen me use both of these 100 times, I'm sorry, but they're my favorites. The Rimmel London Lasting Finish 25-Hour Breathable Longwear Foundation in Ivory. So this one I use L10 or L20. This one I use Ivory. So I don't know which one to use for this video. I guess I'm going to go in with the Rimmel London. So you have to shake this one first. You can hear it shaking around. And then it has a doe foot applicator. If you're going to use this foundation, do one side of your face at a time because it can start to kind of like dry down. So the brush, I even took the brush out of my bathroom. The brush that I use is the BS Mall Face Flat Brush. You can get this kit like off Amazon. And I just start buffing it into the skin. And I initially go in with more stippling motions versus like round blending motions, until everything is kind of a little more evenly spread over the skin. And then in certain areas, like down here along my jaw, I will go in with more like precise circular blending motions to make sure that I'm getting it across all the areas. Ooh, did you hear that neck crack? Across all the areas that I cannot see. So I do have a bit going on my forehead. I've got a bump on my chin still that is going away, but so like I said, not the most full coverage, but I mean, especially for work, it does the trick because typically all I want to do is tone down the redness that is on my face. So what I'm going to do is after I do this other side, I always go back in and add just a little bit more over the top of my cheeks. Because I find that for me anyway, this foundation builds pretty well, at least to the coverage that I want. So if you're looking for like completely flawless full coverage, I would say this is probably not the foundation for you. But if you're looking for just evening it out, kind of a light coverage, I'd say light to medium because it can definitely be built up. Then if you can find your shade in this, you'd probably really enjoy it. And I like the doe foot applicator. I feel like I can control a little bit better how much I'm using versus a pump, because sometimes with a pump I either don't need the full pump, or if I go in for a second pump, then I don't need the full second pump and I'm wasting foundation. So like I said, now I'm going to stipple it in, and if I get up close, which I'll do in just a second, you can definitely, you know, see where I've built it and it has more coverage, but along the sides it still blends in to itself, so it doesn't look like you've just plopped an additional layer of foundation on your face. So I don't know how well it's going to pick up on camera, but some of my coloration still comes through right there. But overall, it has really evened everything out. So what I'm going to do to let it sit for a second is now I'm going to go ahead and go in with my inner corner highlight for my eyes. So two different things I do here. I'll either take a color from the same palette if I want a brighter inner corner or like a pop inner corner, or I'll take whatever highlighter I'm going to be using, which this is the Marzipan Heart from iHeart Revolution, which is my go-to every day, or I'll take that highlighter and use it to tie everything together. So I'm going to use a different color, and for this I think I'm going to go in with this brighter gold down in the corner, because I feel like this is something that I would use for this outfit to bring out the little, if you can see them, the little yellow bits in my little pullover. So just right on that inner corner, not taking it too high or too low. And then I'm going to go back in and do the same thing on the other eye. So it just brings out, in my opinion, just a little bit more. Granted, I wear glasses, so sometimes it's not that easy to see, but hey, it's the thought that counts, right? So now it's been given a few minutes. So this foundation almost completely sets. So if I tap, there's almost nothing coming off onto my finger. You can't see where I was just touching. So I'm going to go ahead and go in with bronzer. If you feel more comfortable setting it, you can. I have typically more oily skin here, and I don't tend to have a problem with this foundation breaking down too early if I don't set it. So the bronzer I tend to go toward, and if I'm going to use a blush for work, the blush I've been using are in this Wonder Beauty Trip for Two Blush and Bronzer Duo. So the blush is called Bellini, and the bronzer is Costa Ray. Typically, if I want a blush, I'm going to go for something a little more peachy, but this is like a nudie pink enough that it tends to work fine. This does have a mirror in it, so I just take my BS Mall Face Angled brush, tap into the bronzer, tap off to make sure it's not too much, and then just start going in. And I try to angle, obviously, straight from the ear, like top of the ear down. Don't want to build up too much because I don't want it too dark, because this bronzer can air, sorry, I can't talk and do this. It can come off a little warm if too much is applied. So then I'm just going to take the littlest bit and bronze up here at my temples. And then like push that up into my hairline so it's not as stark a contrast. And that's all I really do for bronzer. And then I'm just going to take another look, just make sure it's all blended in the way I want it from every angle. And if it's not, which this side, like I took down a little far, I take my foundation brush and go back under it versus trying to bake. That doesn't work well for my skin. So now I'm going to go in with highlight. So again, this is the Marzipan Heart highlight by iHeart Revolution. It's got the white and the gold. So it does come off very icy because of the white. But if you go more into the gold areas, can definitely be kind of warmed up a little bit. I don't want to say warmed up because it doesn't ever get fully warm because there's not enough of the gold. I just take a nice fluffy brush. This is not the one from my bathroom, and the reason for that is because I washed that one. So it is currently out of commission until it finishes drying. So I just take it, go across the top. Obviously you can see where this one picks up because it is so white. And then just go across the top of my cheekbones and up onto my temple because that is where the light naturally hits. So same thing on the other side. I know a lot of people do not like highlighters that are this icy, and I understand. That's just what I'm drawn to. Now I'm going to take my pinky, go down the highlighter, and go down the bridge of my nose, and then a little pop on the tip, on the bridge. I have an eyelash stuck to the side of my nose. And then, of course, we'll go in with mascara. My typical go-to, if I don't have a Wander Beauty Unlashed for every day, is my Too Faced Better Than Sex, because this wears really well and washes off really well. So I don't go in for another layer after it dries. I don't do that with like any mascara. So we're just going in, and I always make sure that I've done both highlight and inner corner highlight before I do this step. That way, if with either step I've gotten highlighter on my lashes, this covers them because I don't want my lashes to be sparkly. So we're building it up just enough to be able to see lashes. And then lip to finish it off. This is the Half Caked Theme Song Lip Fondant. Well, the brand is Half Caked. It's their lip fondant. And the shade is Theme Song. I said that really poorly. I love these applicators. It's like one of those triangle tips. They smell so good. And this is just like a nice nude. It does in flash photos. Hold on. In flash, it can come across a little more pink. So that's something to just be aware of. But I never have to dip back in with this applicator. And there you go. That is my go-to everyday full face work makeup, if I'm gonna do that. So let me know your thoughts down below. Do we have similar makeup looks? Do you have any suggestions? What other type of looks would you like to see? And subscribe to see more of my content. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!